All of us who love movies have always been very unhappy about how films were neglected and even destroyed over the decades.
So many of these movies have disappeared. They weren't available to anyone, and in many instances, the original materials were gone.
I can think of a lot of films, that we haven't gotten to yet that are in danger of disappearing.
They are not only artistic works such as Hollywood feature films or documentary films.
They include the very first movies made in America, the silent films. They include industrial films, newsreels, documentaries, independent features, animation, political ads.
Films that were of my generation, films just before my generation, films of the 70s, were falling apart.
The work they poured their heart and soul into should survive, and in a form that it can be shown and experienced as it was originally intended as well.
You might see a film beautifully presented on TCM, and the audience might just think, well, why would you need to do more than that?
Because you have a copy of the movie at home on your shelf doesn't mean that it's been preserved. The original film material themselves, at the highest possible resolution, must be preserved. We have to keep this around because in future generations there will be something much better than DVD.
Myself and a number of other friends of mine, filmmakers, went to see a double bill of Niagara and The 7-Year Itch. When The 7-Year Itch was presented, we were shocked by the condition of the print. This was so disturbing that, and not only that, that was the first time I caught a major film like that faded to the point where you couldn't really see the movie in a way. You can't see the actors' faces, their eyes.
I was at a meeting with Martin Scorsese, and we were saying, what is it that we could do that would enable the field of film preservation to make a great leap forward?
Bob Rosen, UCLA, suggested that we could bring the archivists and the studio executives together.
On the one side, there were the archives. On the other side, there were these great filmmakers.
People like Martin Scorsese, who really had the idea of the Film Foundation, and Steven Spielberg and George Lucas. It was very important to them personally as something that they enjoyed, but also in the development of their craft.
Into the 90s, there was practically no monies available for film preservation.
The foundation was able to enlighten people and educate people about the extent of the problem, how fragile film is, how many films have already been lost.
They have been able to help archives and libraries and other institutions preserve some of the major and, this is really extremely important, minor works of cinema.
Sometimes gathering all the elements that it takes to actually make a film preservation requires a lot of collaboration.
Everybody's communicating about what elements are out there, making sure everything gets pulled in, everything gets looked at.
We pull in all the picture elements, all the sound elements that we can find, and we go through a fairly extensive physical analysis of all of the material.
You have to get the best quality image, and the only way you get the best quality image is from as much as possible, as close as possible to the original element, which is the negative. And most of that's gone now.
You sometimes have to piece together bits and pieces from various different prints to create a master.
And then making that your preservation master, the definitive restored version of the film.
You always dream to go back and work with the original camera negatives, which in the case of The River and The Red Shoes, luckily we were able to do it. The Red Shoes had to be done digitally because those negatives had a lot of damage.
Sometimes the original camera negative has mold growth on them, and so we have to correct the damage digitally.
Renoir's The River. To make anything good, we realized we were going to have to go back to the original 3-strip Technicolor negatives. We were extremely lucky because they were still in pristine condition.
The restoration of Bonjour Tristesse was one of our earlier collaborations, and certainly the expertise that we derived from this collaboration, working with the Museum of Modern Art, is always valuable. The archivists look at these films from a fairly pure perspective, which is not to denature in any way the original achievement of the filmmakers.
In the case of Leave Her to Heaven, we want it to look as much like it originally looked as possible. As we collaborate, particularly with film archives, we bring our collective knowledge of what films from a certain era are supposed to look like, or what does the photography of a certain cameraman look like.
Ultimately, what you want to be able to do with any film is be able to exhibit it somehow and have it look and sound essentially the way it did on the first day it hit the screen.
We have an obligation to future generations to save as much as we can for them.
You never know, even if a film isn't very good. It could inspire a lot of young filmmakers out there, young writers, actors, filmmakers for the future.
The platform that the Film Foundation offers through, in many ways, the voice of Martin Scorsese as the public face for film preservation just shines a spotlight on the work that we're all doing that would otherwise remain invisible.
He brings to mind to his colleagues the fact that this is a crucial element.
And he's really an incredible leader in preservation, and he's really allowed us to do everything that we've been able to accomplish over these 20 years.
He came in just in time when it was needed, and that is a miracle.
Movies provide our best window into the time and place that they were made.
Movies reflect our culture while at the same time in some ways defining it. You know, our dreams and neuroses writ large on a giant screen are reflected back at us and somehow transform and inform the way that we look at the world.
In short, it's nothing less than our collective memory. So to lose our collective memory, to lose our film, is to lose part of ourselves.
Naturally, over the years, what the films say, how they were made, certainly reflect who we are as a culture and people.